The night air was thick with the salty breath of the Atlantic as it swept over Cocoa Beach, Florida, carrying with it a cacophony of laughter, music, and the unmistakable buzz of excitement. The once quiet neighborhood was now alive with the pulsing beat of a party that seemed impossibly large for the small beachside community. Shadows danced across the sand, silhouettes of teenagers moving in erratic patterns, their movements barely visible through the flickering lights of bonfires. Inside the sprawling beach house, chaos reigned. Clara Thompson, principal of Jefferson Elementary School, found herself at the epicenter of a storm she did not quite know how to control. Her heart raced as she moved through the throng of bodies, her mind struggling to grasp how things had spiraled so quickly out of control. Just hours before, this was supposed to be a simple gathering, a harmless event meant to celebrate a new year. But now, as Clara flicked off lights in an attempt to quell the spreading chaos, she felt panic clawing at her composure. The sound of shattering glass punctuated the air as another window met its demise. Somewhere outside, amidst the laughter and blaring music, came the distant wail of sirens, a sound that twisted Clara's stomach into knots. Jenna Parks, Clara's confidant and fellow educator, appeared beside her, eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. "Clara, we need to do something," Jenna urged, her voice barely audible over the din. "I know," Clara replied, her voice tight. "I'm trying." Outside, officers from the Cocoa Beach Police Department arrived on scene, their presence doing little to dampen the chaos. Flashlights cut through the dark like accusatory beams as they navigated through clusters of unruly teens. Officer Dan Mitchell took in the scene with a practiced eye. He had seen parties like this before, but never one hosted by someone like Clara. "Get these kids under control," he barked into his radio as he moved forward. As police began dispersing the crowd, Clara watched helplessly from the porch. Her reputation crumbled with every passing second, whispers and rumors already taking flight among neighbors who peered from behind drawn curtains. Suddenly, commotion erupted near one of the bonfires. A teenager lay sprawled on the sand, unconscious and pale under the moonlight. Officers rushed to his aid while others called for medical assistance. The sight made Clara's heart drop, a tangible consequence of her misguided decision. In that moment, as she watched paramedics tend to the boy whose future now teetered on a knife's edge, Clara realized there was no undoing what had been set in motion. "What were we thinking?" Jenna whispered beside her, but before Clara could respond, a commotion at the edge of the property drew her attention. An officer had discovered something buried, half hidden in a shrub. An abandoned backpack stuffed with empty bottles and what appeared to be scraps of paper. "Ma'am," Officer Mitchell called out to Clara as he approached with purpose in his stride. "We need to talk." The weight of his words settled heavily upon her shoulders, a prelude to questions that demanded answers she wasn't sure she could provide. And then came another call over Mitchell's radio, a voice urgent and strained. "We've got another situation down by the dunes." As Clara turned toward this new development, dread coiled tighter around her heart. What more could possibly go wrong? The night was far from over. The night air still carried the echoes of chaos as Clara stood frozen, Officer Mitchell's voice trailing in her ears. The weight of the abandoned backpack seemed to grow heavier with each second it remained untouched at the edge of the lawn. A siren's wail faded into the distance as paramedics sped away the unconscious teen, leaving a void filled only by the murmurs of lingering partygoers. Clara turned towards Jenna, whose face mirrored her own turmoil, a blend of fear and regret. "What could possibly be in those papers?" Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible above the whispering wind. "I don't know," Clara replied, her gaze fixed on the backpack. "But whatever it is, it can't be good." Inside the house, shadows stretched across the walls like accusing fingers as Clara moved to collect her thoughts. She glanced at framed photos lining a sideboard, images from school events where she was flanked by smiling children, moments now soured by tonight's scandal. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her husband, who was out of town on business. "Heard something happened at home. Are you okay?" The screen dimmed as she hesitated, unsure how to explain or even if she should. Outside, Officer Mitchell examined the contents of the backpack under the beam of his flashlight. Empty liquor bottles clinked together ominously, and he frowned at a crumpled flyer advertising an upcoming school event, an unsettling connection that left him with more questions than answers. Returning to Clara, he raised an eyebrow. "You need to tell me why this was here," he demanded gently but firmly. Clara swallowed hard, choosing her words carefully. "I have no idea how it got there," she confessed. This was supposed to be just a small get-together for some teachers and their families. Things got out of hand. Jenna stepped forward, desperation coloring her voice. "It wasn't meant to be like this. We didn't realize so many would show up or that things would turn so wild." Mitchell nodded slowly, but skepticism lingered in his eyes. "We'll need statements from both of you," he instructed before moving away. As the crowd thinned and officers continued their work, Clara retreated into her thoughts, her mind swirling with memories that painted a picture far more complex than she had allowed herself to acknowledge. Clara and Jenna had met years ago at a teaching seminar, kindred spirits drawn together by shared ideals and dreams for their students' futures. Over time, their bond had deepened beyond professional camaraderie into something akin to family. But recently, Clara had felt an inexplicable pressure, a need to prove herself beyond her professional successes. Hosting gatherings became a way to maintain influence in social circles she believed crucial for both personal and career advancement. Jenna's involvement was equally perplexing. Always the more reserved of the two, she'd seemed to relish these moments of reckless abandon, a chance perhaps to escape the constraints of her everyday life. The evening's events had shattered any illusion that what they were doing was harmless fun. As Clara drifted back outside, she caught sight of another officer gesturing towards something uncovered near the dunes. A second backpack nestled in shadows betrayed by moonlight. Her heart stuttered at this new revelation. What did these hidden caches signify? And why were they here? Before she could dwell further, Mitchell's radio crackled again. Urgent voices detailing yet another incident requiring immediate attention, this time involving someone spotted fleeing toward the beach as officers approached. Clara felt dread claw at her insides once more as she stood on tiptoe to see down towards where figures moved against sand dunes like specters in the night. The mystery deepened with every passing moment, leaving Clara on tenterhooks about what revelations awaited just beyond reach. The moon hung low over Cocoa Beach, casting long shadows that stretched across the dunes like dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as the commotion from the beach reached her ears, a reminder of the chaotic events that continued to spiral out of control. Officer Mitchell's radio crackled, his voice sharp, underscored by urgency. "We've got another situation down by the dunes." The words lingered in the air, heavy and foreboding. As Clara stepped closer to the edge of the lawn, an unsettling chill crept up her spine. In the distance, she could make out figures moving against the backdrop of sand and sea, a spectral dance veiled in moonlight. The officers' flashlights cut through the darkness with precision, revealing a second backpack nestled within the shadows. Mitchell approached with a grim expression, his flashlight flickering over Clara's face. "Ma'am," he began, his tone measured yet insistent. "We need to discuss what we just found." Clara nodded, apprehension tightening her throat. The weight of hidden truths pressed upon her shoulders. Secrets she feared were beginning to seep into the open. She could feel Jenna's presence beside her, a silent shadow sharing in her dread. "What is it?" Jenna asked, her voice fragile amidst the tension. Mitchell hesitated before answering. "It appears someone might be using these gatherings for something more than just a party," he stated, his eyes locking onto Clara's. The insinuation sent a jolt through Clara as she recalled whispers and rumors circulating among faculty, hushed conversations hinting at pressures from parents and board members alike, pushing for results no matter the cost. Inside the house, chaos had been replaced by an eerie stillness that mirrored Clara's internal turmoil. She drifted through rooms once filled with laughter and music, now haunted by echoes of what transpired. Her phone vibrated again, another message from her husband asking about the night's events. Clara paused at a window overlooking the beach, her reflection staring back at her, a visage etched with worry and regret. She thought about her career, meticulously built on trust and integrity, now precariously balanced on a precipice edged with scandal. Back outside, Mitchell called for backup while explaining to Clara that they'd found papers in the second backpack, documents featuring student names alongside cryptic notes that hinted at something ominous. "I need you to think," he urged. "Have there been any strange occurrences at school recently? Any reason someone might have it out for you?" Clara searched her memory for anything that could explain this madness, but came up empty-handed. "Nothing like this," she murmured. Jenna interjected with a shaky breath. "Could it be blackmail? Maybe someone's trying to frame us for something we didn't do?" Mitchell considered this theory silently, his brow furrowed in thought. The notion of blackmail wasn't far-fetched, given recent pressures Clara had faced from influential parents, demanding more than academic excellence from their children. As Mitchell turned away to coordinate further searches along the beach, Clara felt an unsettling clarity settle over her, a realization that this was only the beginning of uncovering layers of deceit woven into Cocoa Beach's educational fabric. Then came a sharp shout from down by the water, a discovery that sent officers racing towards breaking waves where something unexpected had washed ashore. Clara strained to see what they'd found, but was blocked by bodies moving swiftly toward this new crisis point. Her pulse quickened as anxiety flared anew. Whatever lay ahead promised revelations that might unravel everything she'd worked tirelessly to protect. The night was far from over, and answers seemed both tantalizingly close, yet maddeningly out of reach. The night seemed to draw its breath in anticipation as Clara strained to catch a glimpse of what the officers had discovered along the shoreline. The air was thick with tension, a palpable force that seemed to bind everyone present in its grip. The distant shouts of the officers echoed across the beach, each word buried beneath the crash of restless waves. Clara, standing at the edge of her lawn, felt a chill run through her, a harbinger of revelations yet to come. Her mind raced, replaying Officer Mitchell's words about the cryptic notes found among student names. The notion of someone using this chaos for a darker purpose gnawed at her insides. Jenna's theory of blackmail danced on the edges of plausibility, tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly elusive. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were all pawns in a game whose rules they did not understand. As she turned away from the beach, Mitchell approached, his face a mask of determination tempered with concern. "We've found something," he began, his voice steady but urgent. Clara's heart skipped as she braced for whatever revelation he would unveil. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mitchell hesitated, glancing back toward his colleagues, who were clustered around an object partially buried in wet sand. "It's another backpack," he finally said, "but this one's different. There's something more inside." Before Clara could respond, a ripple of movement swept through the crowd as officers stepped aside to reveal what they had unearthed. A sleek black case, its surface glistening under the moonlight. The sight sent a shiver through Clara, an ominous artifact that seemed out of place amidst the casual remnants of a beach party. Jenna joined Clara's side, her eyes widening at the sight. "Do you think, could it be connected somehow?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief and fear. Clara shook her head slowly, uncertain of anything anymore. "I don't know," she admitted, feeling the weight of each unanswered question pressing down on her. Mitchell knelt by the case and carefully opened it, revealing an array of documents and electronic devices neatly arranged inside. His expression shifted from curiosity to alarm as he rifled through its contents, a transformation that did not go unnoticed by those watching. "This changes things," he muttered under his breath before turning his full attention back to Clara and Jenna. "These documents, they're not just notes or flyers," he explained. "They're detailed records. Attendance logs, student performance reviews, information that should be confidential." His gaze hardened with suspicion as realization dawned on him. Clara felt her stomach twist, a sickening lurch at the thought that someone had breached their trust so thoroughly. Who would do this? "And why here?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. Mitchell shook his head, clearly grappling with the same questions. "We need to take this back for analysis," he decided, motioning for an officer to secure the case. Just then, an officer's radio crackled to life with an urgent message. "Suspect spotted near the old lighthouse. Request backup." The words electrified the air around them as Mitchell snapped into action, barking orders and coordinating their response. Clara watched helplessly as officers moved swiftly toward this new development, a race against time that seemed both thrilling and terrifying. As she stood there in the moonlit night, Clara realized with chilling clarity that this was far from over. They were entangled in something larger than themselves, a web of deceit and danger that threatened everything she held dear. The night was far from over. Its shadows concealed truths waiting to be revealed. The night sky hung heavy over Cocoa Beach as the officers moved swiftly towards the old lighthouse, their figures disappearing into the shadows like phantoms on a mission. Clara remained rooted to the spot, her mind swirling with the revelation of the confidential documents found in the sleek black case. It was a tangible betrayal, one that gnawed at her sense of safety and trust. Jenna stood beside her, eyes wide with disbelief as she whispered, "Who could have done this? Clara?" Clara shook her head, trying to suppress the rising tide of panic. "I don't know," she replied, her voice tinged with desperation. "But whoever it is, they know too much about our students." As the gravity of the situation settled over them, Mitchell returned, his expression unreadable yet determined. "We need to figure out why this information was brought here of all places," he said, casting a wary glance towards the distant lighthouse. Clara nodded, though her thoughts were scattered. The pieces didn't fit together. The party, the backpacks, and now this breach of privacy. Her mind replayed every interaction she'd had over the past few months, searching for signs she'd missed. Underneath it all was the nagging suspicion that this was personal, a targeted attack aimed at dismantling everything she held dear. Mitchell's radio crackled again, pulling them back to the unfolding scene at the lighthouse. "Suspect sighted near entrance. Request backup immediately." The urgency in the officer's voice reignited Clara's sense of foreboding. She glanced towards Jenna, who seemed equally caught between fear and determination. "Stay here," Mitchell instructed firmly, before breaking into a jog towards his team. Left alone with Jenna amidst the fading echoes of chaos, Clara felt a sudden rush of resolve. "We have to get to the bottom of this," she murmured. Jenna nodded in agreement, but looked troubled. But how? If someone's going through this much trouble... Clara paused, her mind racing. "We need to go through those documents ourselves," she suggested. "There might be something in there, a clue we can use." Determined to take action, they approached the officer now guarding the case. After some persuasion and a promise to not disturb any evidence, they were granted access under supervision. As they sifted through pages by flashlight beams, Clara felt a chill with each name that passed under her fingers. Children she'd vowed to protect, now unwittingly entangled in a sinister plot. Each document revealed more than just academic records. There were notes detailing personal backgrounds, information only someone within their circle could have gathered. Suddenly, Jenna gasped, pulling out a sheet that made Clara's heart stop momentarily. A map of Jefferson Elementary with certain rooms circled in red ink. "What does this mean?" Jenna asked breathlessly. Clara traced one finger over the map's surface as dread pooled in her stomach. "It means they've been inside," she whispered hoarsely. Before they could ponder further implications or alert Mitchell about their discovery, a loud crash echoed from where officers were congregating near the lighthouse. Both women looked up sharply as tension spiked anew. The sound seemed both an omen and an invitation for something more sinister lurking in wait. As they stood poised on tenterhooks between revelation and fear, Clara couldn't shake off an unsettling thought. The night had begun with chaos, but promised only darker truths yet uncovered beneath its shroud.